Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here, doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons. Doing it live right here on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Coming off a record-shattering and winning month of July, stocks pulling back to close out the week. Gold shot higher on this first trading day of August, with the focus of attention on the July jobs report, which came in weaker than expected. That got President Trump's attention, and the president immediately fired the head of the government agency that releases the monthly jobs report. That's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In a social media post today, the president announced he told his team to remove Erica McEntarfer as commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. She'd been appointed to that position by President Trump's predecessor, President Biden. The president wrote on social media, "We need accurate jobs numbers. I've directed my team to fire this Biden political appointee immediately. She'll be replaced with someone much more competent and qualified," unquote. The White House later released a statement saying a lengthy history of inaccuracies and incompetence by Erica McEntarfer, the former Biden-appointed commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has completely eroded public trust in the government agency charged with disseminating key data used by policymakers and businesses to make consequential decisions. That was the statement released by the White House. At the same time, the unemployment rate, and based on that report we got today, ticked higher to 4.2%, in line with analysts' expectations, but payroll growth totaled just 73,000 for July. That was above the June total of 14,000, but below the even meager estimate of a gain of 100,000. We're also following the breaking news this afternoon that President Trump said he's ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate regions in response to statements from former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. The president said he'd ordered 2 nuclear subs move closer to Russia in response to what the president called highly provocative statements by that top Kremlin official. We're following these developments very closely as well. The president did not say whether a specific statement from Medvedev prompted the retaliation, as the Kremlin official has been on an anti-American tirade for weeks. Well, we did see the stock market pull back today in the face of all this. Also, tariffs kicking in and in focus once again. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 542 points at 43,588. The S&P 500 down 101. And the NASDAQ slid 472 points. The VIX index shot higher by 22%. The yield in the 10-year note is pulled back to 4.22%. Gold shot higher today, up nearly $68 at $3,416 an ounce, up about 2%. The price of oil pulling back to $67.26 a barrel. I'll be discussing what's happening with all this on the job front, the economy, the markets. Extended coverage this hour, starting shortly with the one and only Steve Forbes, CEO of Forbes Media, which includes Forbes Magazine. I'll also be joined later this hour by prominent Los Angeles-based economist Kevin Clouden, Executive Director at Milken Institute Finance. We're also watching what's happening on the AI front today in a big way, with the AI names, of course, rallying big time in the last month or so. We see NVIDIA, which hit a record high just in the last week or so, pulling back today, along with the other big names. NVIDIA down more than $4 at $173 and change. We see Microsoft, which has been knocking it out of the park lately, pulling back more than $9 at $524.11. Big tech firms, Amazon, Google, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta all reported they were set to spend as much as $364 billion on AI. And we'll be discussing more this hour. AI's use in education continues to evolve. I'll be joined later this hour by Dr. Michael Everest, founder and CEO at EDU, as in EdU, Immersive AI Learning. That's the name of the company, EdU. He also serves as chairman emeritus at Everest Family Foundation, based here in Los Angeles. Dr. Everest will be joining me here in the studio coming up later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, and the economy, a lot to unpack today. Joining us now, Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media, which includes Forbes Magazine. He's author of numerous books. His latest, Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, and How to Fix It, former Republican presidential candidate. Steve Forbes, thank you very much for joining us on this big day here today.
Good to be with you. Thank you. It's been quite a week.
Quite a week, quite a day, quite a year. Lot to unpack here. So we got the right person here on the live with us on the air, Steve Forbes. Give us your reaction to this jobs report and the drama surrounding the release of that report today.
Well, for several years now, the jobs reports, monthly jobs reports coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics have been very volatile, massive revisions. Hardly a month goes by where we haven't had a revision of the previous month. And part of it is what is happening with immigration. We had a lot of illegal immigration. Now that's receding. Even people who are still in the country don't want to, in effect, go out and be seen on the radar. So that's one reason why the jobs participation rate is going down. And then you have a weak economy. The 3% GDP growth in the second quarter was after the distortion from trade in the first quarter. A lot of companies bought inventories in the first quarter to beat the tariffs. So when you look at the 6-month figure, it was only 1.2%. And in the private sector, the situation's even worse. It's clear private companies, they're not laying off people, but they're not doing much hiring. And that's a sign of an economy stalling. So the jobs report was very disappointing, but confirmed what I think people have been feeling about the economy. Things are sluggish. Part of it's uncertainty, but also there's not much demand out there for what companies are offering in terms of services and products.
All right, and right off the bat, the August jobs report will show one down right off the bat here. The head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, fired.
Yes, and people say, oh, that's just a political shooting of the messenger. That may have, what had the jobs report today may have precipitated the firing, but it was clear there are very serious concerns about how the BLS does statistics, how they do seasonal adjustments. Give you one quick example about seasonal adjustments and how imprecise they can be. In December, companies, especially retailers, the post office, does a lot of hiring for the holidays. Then in January, those temporaries are laid off. So in terms of you look at the jobs report in December, it zooms. In January, it falls sharply. That's why they do seasonal adjustments. So when you have a January report that shows the job count has gone up, actually it's probably gone down before the adjustment of 400, 500, 600,000. So those things, they have not done a good job in responding to changes in the economy. And there's another part of the survey called the household survey where they actually call people's homes, ask who's working and all that sort of thing. And that number this month was down 260,000, more than 260,000. That reflects small businesses. So again, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has got to get its act together in terms of responding to these changes, revise their seasonal adjustment, because you can't rely on the numbers, not when you have these kind of monthly adjustments, and which shows that trying to count people who are working, it is not as easy as we were once led to believe.
On the air live with Steve Forbes. Thank you for that. Thank you for that thorough explanation with Steve Forbes live with us on the air here. And we also got the Fed decision on interest rates and holding the line there. New readings on inflation as well. And of course, you wrote the book on it, Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, and How to Fix It. What about the other big news this week? The Fed statement, the Fed chairman's news conference, his comments, and the latest reading on inflation. What we're told is supposedly the Fed's favorite reading on inflation.
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid the Federal Reserve is responding to criticisms and pressures from President Trump. And by the way, it's not the first time you've had battles between presidents and the Federal Reserve, going back to Harry Truman, who led to put pressure on to lead to the firing of the head of the Federal Reserve before they reached what they call a treaty between the Treasury Department and the Fed. That goes back decades, but these things are Trump may have been more noisy than previous presidents, but the conflicts are not unusual. But in the case of Chairman Powell, unfortunately, the Fed has delayed trying to respond to adverse impacts on the economy. And he should have eased up, reduced rates in June. They should have done it in July, even with those official rates of inflation coming down. But this gets to something that I hope now will come to the fore, and that is the way the Federal Reserve operates, the philosophy by which the Fed operates. The Fed basically has an allergy to a vigorously growing economy. They believe that inflation is caused by prosperity. And so that's why they want to keep the economy depressed, because they think that inflation still hasn't been conquered yet. They don't realize the way you conquer monetary inflation is by keeping a stable value of the dollar instead of letting it bounce around like a yo-yo. And the dollar has been weakening in recent months, and the Federal Reserve is ignoring that. So right now we're on the path of getting the worst of both worlds. Monetary inflation in the future. You see that in the gold price. You see that in the dollar against other currencies, and a weakening economy. And so the Fed's bad modeling, you might say, the bad way they look at the world, I think is going to become under examination, which will be a good thing, because we need a Fed that knows how to operate and knows something about inflation, which clearly this crowd does not. And it's not helped when they spend $3 billion refurbishing their headquarters in Washington. Leave the Taj Mahal to India.
On your live with Steve Forbes, and you cited a $3 billion number, not the $2.5 billion that the Fed chairman insists, but the number that President Trump presented. It was just about a week or so ago when they had that big meeting at the Federal Reserve at that construction site in there. Let me ask you this, Steve Forbes. Gold notably shot higher today, above 3,400 again, near its record high, which was 3,500, just above that recently. Silver also has been hovering near $40 an ounce, and even platinum has seen a big run up here. Certainly when we see moves like this, usually that means there are concerns about inflation. Where do you see the price of gold go from here?
Well, the price of gold is reflecting the lack of faith in the dollar. And you see that in the foreign exchange markets. The euro, the European economies are in much worse shape than ours, yet their currency is stronger, not because they have a strong currency, but people are losing faith in the ability of the U.S. to keep the dollar stable in value. So they're marking it down in value. And that's a bad thing. And that means gold will be trending up. The fact that it's gone in the last 2+ years from $1,800 an ounce to over $3,300 are red lights flashing big time the future of inflation. But unfortunately, the only way the Fed knows how to fight inflation is by increasing unemployment. So a big battle is going to come up with the Fed. But in the meantime, I think people should always have a little bit of gold, not as an investment, but so much as an insurance policy against bad policy making made in Washington. And certainly in recent years, we've needed that kind of insurance.
And also a lot of geopolitical concerns also appearing to help boost the price of gold as well, including this latest report today. President Trump is ordering 2 nuclear submarines to be positioned in the appropriate region, in his words, in response to statements by the former Russian President Medvedev. Haven't said his name in years, but he was the former Russian president. President Trump ordering 2 nuclear subs move closer to Russia in response to what the president called highly provocative statements by that top Kremlin official. What's your reaction to this big news, and what do you see happening here?
Well, I think it reflects a big change in the Ukraine policy of President Trump, who, when he took office, thought he was going to cut a deal with Vladimir Putin on the war, and there were fears that he was going to end up putting Ukraine in a position of becoming a colony of Russia in all but name. But Putin played President Trump along. The president did not react well to that, being played along, being lied to. And so he's now talking about making more weapons available to the Ukrainians, which is fit and proper. And when Medvedev, who is a puppet of Putin, he doesn't say anything without Putin's giving him the script. When he made those nuclear statements, in the past when Putin and the Russians had made noise about nuclear statements, under Joe Biden, the U.S. backed off on helping Ukraine. And in this case, though, I think President Trump is saying, we're not going to be blackmailed by you making those noises. You want to make those noises, we're going to send 2 nuclear submarines within range, and hopefully nothing will happen. But we're not going to be cowed by your statements. We're going to help Ukraine, and hopefully those weapons will come through, and new sanctions will be applied. The only thing Vladimir Putin respects is power. And if he sees that he's not going to be able to overwhelm Ukraine, which he thinks he's going to do now, by just a massive loss of life on the field. Russian casualties are now over 1 million, killed and wounded and missing. And he thinks he can still win the war when he realizes, hopefully, if President Trump really comes through on the weaponry, as will the Europeans, and the sanctions, Putin will realize he's not going to win the war, and therefore he'll be more amenable to cutting a deal, not because he likes Donald Trump, but because he knows he can't win the war.
On the Air Live with Steve Forbes, turning to the Middle East. We're coming up on the second anniversary of the terror attack by Hamas on Israel, October 7, 2023. Hard to believe, almost 2 years gone by, and the war continues, and a lot of the focus of attention on what's happening there in the Gaza territories and so forth, and a couple of European countries calling on a Palestinian state. What is your reaction to these latest developments?
Well, in terms of recognizing a Palestinian state, that's almost recognizing something that doesn't exist. Are you talking about Hamas? Are you talking about Hezbollah? Are you talking about the Palestinian Authority, which has no authority at all in the West Bank these days? So what in the world are you talking about? This was just politics, internal politics. As you know, France has a very large Muslim population that never is really integrated well into France. And Canada's playing games for their own reasons. So it's a big nothing, but it just complicates things. In terms of the Israelis and the president want a ceasefire in Gaza to make sure people are properly fed. But unfortunately, Hamas feels that if they continue to obstruct effective aid, that's going to put pressure on the Israelis to pull back. And so that, unfortunately, is going to play out in a bad way. And also in terms of Iran now is saying, oh, we were hurt badly by those attacks, which they were. Initially, they said, oh, we weren't as badly hurt as everyone said. Then they realized that's just inviting more attacks from the Israelis. And so I think Iran's pulling back a little bit, and overtly, hoping someday to rebuild their nuclear capability. But in the meantime, they're still continuing where they can to supply weaponry to their proxy forces in the Middle East, the Houthis, and even the Hamas forces, beleaguered though they may be in Gaza.
Turning to another big subject this week, tariffs. Looks like the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, the head of the biggest bank in the country, changes his tune on tariffs, saying so far so good. What is your reaction to how the tariff news is playing out this week with various deals happening and more to come?
Well, we have to remember tariffs are a tax, and these are going to be taxes on the U.S. Estimates are about $400-500 billion. And even more, they're disruptive to supply chains. They're going to lead to higher costs for businesses, may not reflect it in consumer prices, but it is going to reflect businesses getting hurt and less availability of certain products and services. And I think I'll be blunt, and I've been on your show before, I thought there are better ways to deal with trade issues than these blanket sweeping tax increases. So I'm surprised the market has held up as well as it had in the face of these tariff increases. But I think you can take hope in terms of tariffs, is that now they're before the courts. They are before a trade court, federal trade court several months ago. They ruled unanimously against them, that if you want tariffs permanently, you have to have congressional approval. And now it's going to the appeals court. 11 judges, usually in an appeals court, Frank, it's usually 3 judges hear the case. In this case, the whole court, 11 judges are hearing the case. And judging from the questioning on Thursday, they held a hearing. It looks like ultimately the Supreme Court's going to rule that these tariffs are unconstitutional, most of them, and that the president's going to have to get congressional approval for these tariffs because they are a tax. And the Constitution's very clear. Only Congress can pass taxes.
See it tonight. Read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek On Money, live with Steve Forbes here right now. Before we let you off the hook, there must be no Yankees game tonight. Want to ask you about the New York mayor's race, which is getting international attention, and this Mamdani, who last check still leading the charge there. How is this playing out in New York?
It's a dreadful situation. He is a far left doesn't do it. He is a communist. He is anti-police. Now he's trying to pretend, oh no, he really isn't. But every statement he's made as a lawmaker in the state capital of Albany, where he's been for 5 years, he's supported every measure to undo the police and take money away. And there's special forces which deal with the protests and the like. He wants to emasculate. Now he wants to pretend, oh no, he really doesn't. But I think the key thing is so far you haven't had a sustained campaign pointing out what the man really stands for. And I think that will happen starting in September. And then you're going to see a look for alternatives. Will it be the Republican candidate? Will it be the independent candidate, Mayor Adams? Will it be Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo? And I think people are not going to seriously look until they realize just how bad Mamdani is. And all you have to do is look at Chicago and the disaster that's become under a mayor who shares a similar philosophy. In fact, the mayor of Chicago's philosophy is not even as far left as Mamdani's. And it's a bad scene. And unfortunately, while well-to-do people can move out of New York, big businesses can move out of New York.
Welcome to NFL Flag.
Are you ready? Yeah! Are you ready?
No matter who you are, lace up your cleats, smear on your eye black, step out on the field and chase something. Chase a goal.
Let's get it.
Chase the big time.
Get that, lady.
Chase rings. Chase gold medals. Chase all of it. It's all up for grabs now. NFL Flag. Chase something. Visit NFLflag.com to find a league and start the chase today.
The ones who are going to get hurt the most are lower-income people, middle-income people who don't have the ease of moving out because of jobs and the like, and they're going to be hurt, and there's no recourse for them.
Steve Forbes, as always, wish we had more time. As always, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. That is Steve Forbes, Chairman, Editor-in-Chief, Forbes Media. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Author of numerous books. His latest, by the way, Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, How to Fix It, here on 790 KBC. 790 KBC welcomes the Gypsy Kings, featuring Nicholas Reyes, to the City National Grove of Anaheim, August 13th. Tickets are on sale now at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-795-2222. Tickets furnished by Nederlander Concerts. Rough start to the month of August and a rough end to the week on Wall Street. The Dow pulling back 542 points. The S&P 500 down 101. The Nasdaq down 472. The yield in the 10-year note at 4.22%. This in reaction to the jobs report that came out first thing this morning. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it with prominent Los Angeles area economist Kevin Clouden, who will be joining me shortly. But first, the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC, recapping the top story. Stocks moving lower after President Trump hit virtually every trading partner with sweeping tariff hikes, and the July jobs report came in weaker than expected. The nation's unemployment rate rose to 4.2%, and hiring came in at 73,000, below analyst expectations. Hours after the release of the jobs report, President Trump announced he plans to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Erica McEntarfer had been appointed to that position by President Biden. And joining us live now, prominent Los Angeles-based economist Kevin Clouden, Executive Director at Milken Institute Finance. Kevin Clouden, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank.
A lot to unpack today. Give us your reaction, first of all, to the jobs report and the drama that surrounded the release of that report today.
Well, the jobs report, in some ways, even though if it's been described as unexpected, in many ways matches what a number of economists have been worried about for months, which is that looking at the broader fundamentals of the economy, we've been seeing a number of statements of layoffs, particularly in the tech sector, pressure coming from AI and various automation, and indeed pressure from the stock market to actually see that kind of implementation, which is hard to measure except through layoffs or various efforts like that. We've also seen manufacturing employment decline for 3 straight months, which is not a great sign. And so the question has always been, why was the job report so robust? A lot of it's been in healthcare, which is to be expected because healthcare has continued to grow. But a lot of that other hiring, at least that had been stated, was viewed as a positive sign and a sign that maybe without the full implementation of the tariffs, that the economy was a bit more resilient. But having the announcement of the full tariff implementation happening at the same time as this downward revised jobs report, in some ways matches more what a number of economists all over the spectrum had been kind of wondering about and expecting, and had been honestly puzzled about why it hadn't shown up in the data.
On there live with Kevin Clouden, economist at the Milken Institute. And Kevin Clouden, we did see a pretty dramatic reaction on Wall Street to all of this. The VIX index spiking 22%. The Dow was down more than 500 points. The NASDAQ, which hit record highs recently, also down nearly 500. And the S&P 500, which hit record highs a week or so ago, down 101 points. And this coming off the Federal Reserve meeting this week. And now the focus of attention is on the next Fed meeting in September. What do you think is going to happen next time around, given this latest jobs reading and pressure by President Trump to get the Fed to lower rates?
Well, the irony is that it will actually help the president's case for lowering Fed's rates. In part, what it actually kept the Fed from lowering rates was the perceived resilience in the economy, the perceived resilience in the job numbers. So it's sort of an interesting case where the president, having relied on these numbers for projecting a stronger economy, had also, when combined with the inflationary pressures, particularly not only the measured real ones, but the perceived ones coming from the tariffs, basically blocked that. So then you're going to have very competing factors going on. You have this reduced jobs hiring rate, apparently, that it now exists, which is partly been created by corrected data, because the problem is with the Bureau of Labor Statistics is that it gets its preliminary data from surveys rather than actual hiring numbers. So if companies overstate their hiring or overstate how they're doing, then the BLS actually has to go back and correct it, and which is what we just saw. So that's going on. But at the same time, you're going to see these implementation of tariffs. And even if they aren't at the numbers that were threatened, the fact remains that a 15% tariff on Europe is higher than the 10% base rate the president had stated. If you look at the higher rates in Japan, you look at the higher rates in a number of places, these are all significant concerns. And when combined with the massively higher rates on raw goods like steel and aluminum and refined copper, you've been hearing very public complaints from manufacturers, especially from the CEO of Ford, that even with the general tariffs, that the cars coming in from Japan may actually work out to be cheaper than ones made in the U.S. And what kind of effect that will have in U.S. manufacturing is yet to be seen, on top of other inflationary pressures.
That's very interesting. How do you see the tariffs impacting inflation? We did hear from the head of J.P. Morgan Chase today, Jamie Dimon, a frequent critic of the president, said so far so good as far as the tariffs are concerned.
Well, what's been happening up to this point is that most companies, most distributors, sales sources, and so on, have been eating the cost of the tariffs, at least up to a certain point. And they have been really reluctant to press them onto consumers. We saw the president himself very publicly rebuke Amazon when a while back Amazon was saying they were going to pass those costs along. But that can only happen for so long. And part of the reason that various companies have not passed those costs along is because of the fact that they took advantage both of the predicted tariffs that were going to happen against China, because that was always viewed as the original main target, to front load and pre-order goods massively in the lead up to the president's inauguration and the immediate aftermath, but also when there have been various pauses that happened to when the president paused the implementation of heavier tariffs and so on, that they've also gone through another wave of front-loading those purchases. That has helped them from passing that many costs along, but they're not necessarily going to be able to do that anymore. And as these agreements, if they stick, lock in these higher rates, then those costs are absolutely going to be passed along. So, Jamie Dimon's absolutely right. We haven't seen it ripple through the economy that strongly, but at the same time, part of that expectation was based on what appeared to still be a better hiring report. So the president being upset about those revisions in numbers is in part because his advisors and his communication staff and everybody around him had been pushing this narrative that the tariffs weren't actually harming the economy. And the problem is, as we know from history, all tariffs initially harm the economy. Whether or not they make a difference or help out in the long run, there's always an initial hit.
Prominent Los Angeles-based economist Kevin Cloud, the executive director at Milken Institute Finance, also active in the LA Area Chamber of Commerce. Hope to see you next week at the State of LA Business Event next Thursday in downtown. Kevin Cloud, and thank you very much for that thorough assessment as always, and look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.
Looking forward to it as well, Frank.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go now here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Big tech companies announcing eye-popping plans to spend billions more on AI. AI's use in education, meanwhile, continues to evolve. And joining us now is Dr. Michael Everest, founder and CEO at EDU, as in EDYOU, Immersive AI Learning. He also serves as chairman emeritus at Everest Family Foundation, based right here in Los Angeles. Dr. Everest, thank you very much for joining us live here in the studio today.
Thank you very much, my friend, for the invitation. It's an honor and pleasure to be on your show.
Likewise, thank you very, very much. And tell us about EDYOU.
Yeah, so EDU technology started during the time of COVID, when I saw the disparity of education when everything shut down. So I created EDU to really, really help students, parents, administrators get a hold of education. So what EDU does is it's a 24/7 test prep with your own artificial intelligence tutor, human-like tutor. Any test. Let's say our gentleman over there needs to take his engineering exam. Go push a button, engineering exam test prep. You can prepare through an unlimited question bank. Prepare for the test. If you have questions, you have your AI tutor to help you. And we've taken that thought to corporate America, to schools, to compliance training. And it's really a tool that helps and brings the data back to the user and shows great increase in test scores and grades. A big anomaly that has been, we're putting billions of dollars in education, but our test scores and our outcomes are going downhill rather than uphill. So this is a tool. For 3 years, I researched and I published papers on it that it works. And now we're live. We're at schools. We're at some of the most prominent schools, Sarah Canyon here, public schools out west. And I'm really excited about the product. And more so, I'm excited because it stems at our own Silicon Beach rather than Silicon Valley.
See you tonight. Read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. On the air live with Dr. Michael Everest, founder and CEO at EDU, as in EDYOU. Certainly at the beginning, AI caused a lot of nervousness in the world of education. There were concerns about kids cheating and all that. Has AI now been fully embraced in the education world?
Yeah, that's very, very interesting you said that. When I started this company, AI was a bad word. Oh, my gosh, it's taking over the world. The aliens are coming. And now what's happened is AI is being embraced. And in that embrace, there's a fear of missing out. But in that fear of missing out, a lot of folks are embracing technology that isn't accurate or is giving wrong information or is addictive in the wrong angle. So what I've done is I've made this the safe face of AI, as I say, especially when you're educating people. Education is a very, very high calling, and we have to mold the brains, whether they're 6-year-olds or 65-year-olds. Right information, safe information in a friendly environment where your data is safe. And that's what EDU does. It's a test prep with your own 24/7 AI tutors.
At what age are students now exposed to AI or should be exposed to AI?
I think that students should be exposed to AI 7 or 8 years old is a good time. They're already exposed to it. And you brought up something very, very interesting, Mr. Frank, in that the cheating part. And that's what EDU does. It really builds on academic integrity. There's full exposure of what the student is studying rather than going to ChatGPT and coming back and saying, teacher, look, I did this 5-page report. It's amazing. Now the teacher can see the journey of the student. The parent can see the journey, and the student actually learns.
You're right at the forefront of all of this. Certainly a lot of exciting things on the horizon. What do you think is the most exciting thing that's been brought to your attention lately?
I think the most exciting thing about artificial intelligence is that now I call it the 80-20 rule. Rather than spending 100% of our time on doing stuff that is time-consuming unnecessarily, we can actually do things that help us create and move forward in what we want to do. I compare it to the typewriter. Long handwriting versus creating a keyboard and typing things. Same thing, no one's going to stop writing, but you can write more. And with AI, you can do more by not burning out, do more by doing less, if that makes any sense.
On the air with Dr. Michael Everest, founder and CEO at EDU, that is EDYOU. And we're focused on the jobs report here today. As you heard, Steve Forbes was on this program earlier, and Kevin Clouden, very prominent local economist. And certainly AI is expected to have a huge impact on the future of the job market here in the United States and indeed around the world. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are there'll be a repurposing of jobs. I think that there's going to be people needed to fuel these call centers, these data centers. And I think that there's going to be people that are needed to train these AI models. I think that the jobs aren't going to be taken away. The jobs are going to be repurposed into fueling the new economy of artificial intelligence, which I compare to being even stronger and more consequential than the Industrial Revolution.
That's very, very exciting. Yes. And tell us about your foundation as well, the philanthropic component here as well.
No, the Everest Family Foundation has been working throughout the country and the world to help graduate medical education as well as community outreach programs. Just in our own LA, we help veterans. We're instrumental in helping the veterans get off the sidewalks in West Los Angeles. We're supporting orphanages. We're supporting graduate medical education and research throughout the country, doing important work as cancer research and supporting medical residency growth, because future doctors are needed everywhere.
Doctor, for those who want to explore this subject with you further, what's the best way to do that?
I would love for them to go to edu.com, and they can visit us there. There's a live chat line. Come and experience the product. If the kids are out there that are on the summer slide, parents, get your kids on there and get them ready for school. It will blow your mind away that we can prepare you for any test with your own AI tutor 24/7.
Wonderful, Doctor. Thank you very much for this honor of joining us live here in studio today with your excellent team, I might add. Dr. Michael Everest, founder and CEO at EDU, that's EDYOU, Immersive AI Learning, who also serves as Chairman Emeritus at Everest Family Foundation, based right here in West Los Angeles. Live with us here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here, along with Dave Bleeden, Managing Director at United Gold Group at UnitedGoldGroup.com. Dave, how do global economic shifts influence your investment strategies and gold and precious metals?
So in general, the riskier the world is, the more gold is a store of value, and it's been that way for many, many years. And a lot of people are just like you and me. They're thinking, well, where do I put my money? How do I protect myself? And that's where gold comes in, because it's a store of value. That's why central banks hold gold reserves, because it's been a store of value. So a lot of people out there are thinking, well, how do I own gold? And that's where we come in. We handle all the logistics of it. We set it up for you. We make sure it's insured, and then we'll convert it back to dollars.
Dave, for anyone that wants to reach you, what's the best way to do that?
You can reach us at United Gold Group. That's 800-753-8534, 800-753-8534.
Dave Bleeden, Managing Director at United Gold Group at UnitedGoldGroup.com. You can also tune in on Saturdays at 8 a.m. for expanded details on The Gold Show right here on 790 KABC.
Ad paid for by United Gold Group.